86% of sexual assaults go unreported. To give you a better understanding of this fact, according to the national statistics, nearly 1 in every 2 women have experienced this form of sexual violence in their lifetime. Since these numbers are so high, I'm sure you've come into contact with someone who has experienced some sort of sexual violence. You may not know it because it's something a lot of us don't want to talk about, but it's true and it's real. I have done a speech similar to this, and I have lived through sexual assault myself, and I know others who have lived through it as well. Because of this, I'm able to understand what it's like, and I have more of an insight into it. One of the worst things after being sexually assaulted or raped is already feeling the shame for it. But if you add on the judgment and the shame from other people, it makes it 100 times worse. I want to discuss the effects that are left on a person after being attacked in these ways, the fact that there wasn't consent, and lastly, because it's a form of bullying. I want to begin with talking about the effects that are left on the victim after an attack. As I've said before in my previous speech, there are short-term and long-term effects that are left on the victim. For the short-term effects that are left, they can feel shame, guilt, denial, they'll feel isolated, they can have emotional problems, and in most cases, they're going to be having physical injuries. For the long-term effects, there are a multitude of emotional problems. They can experience anxiety, depression, paranoia, flashbacks, which is usually related to PTSD. They can have persisting fear and panic attacks. I sadly have experienced many of these symptoms, and I have recently had to help a roommate who has PTSD from a similar situation to mine. Having these effects is hard enough, and it's hard to help someone who's dealing with them. I've lost hours upon hours of sleep trying to help my roommate, but adding the shame that you get from other people makes it all worse. It amplifies the effects and makes them happen more. Next, I want to talk about the fact that there already was not consent. This wasn't something that we wanted, so don't shame us for it. I'm sure we've all felt guilty about something that's happened. I'm sure we've felt guilty for something that we might not have had any control in. Have you ever had someone make you feel guilty for something that happened? It's not a good feeling. In a lot of cases, when the rape or assault are reported, unfortunately, some of the first things that are asked are, what were you wearing? Well, were you drinking? Were you doing any drugs? Did you flirt with him? Did you lead him on? You must have been alone with him. You must have done something to make him think that you wanted this. These are some of the worst things to say to someone who's experienced this, because we said no. We didn't lead them on. And if we did, the point is that we still said no, and that should be accepted and respected. This reminds me of the recent case against Brock Turner, who raped a girl behind a dumpster. There's a letter that she wrote to him during the cases where she talks about this, and she talks about the shaming and how hard it is to live with this. I really suggest Googling it and reading it so that you can better understand what it's like to live with this. This takes me to my last point, which is the fact that it's purely bullying. My senior year of high school, which was 3 years after I was attacked, my attacker decided for some reason to bring up what had happened again. I found out through multiple people that he was twisting what happened and made me out to be a crazy person. And even those who did know the full story judged me, and it made me feel awful. I was called awful names, I lost friends, and I felt humiliated all over again. I hate telling people that I was sexually assaulted, because you can see the judgment in their eyes, even if they don't fully recognize it themselves. In a lot of people's mind, the first thing that they think of are those questions I mentioned before, and that needs to stop. I will admit, before this happened to me, one of the first thoughts I had was, well, I wonder if they were wearing something revealing. And it makes me so angry that that was the first thing that I thought of. I was conditioned to think like that, and that's not okay. It's one of the worst parts of reliving it after people judge you and shame you, and they make you feel bad for something that wasn't in your control. This is similar to what happened to one of my best friends who was raped. It was in no way her fault, but people said awful things, and they judged her wrongly, and I watched her suffer from that. There's no reason to be judging those who have been attacked in such an awful way. We're going through enough, and we need all the support we can possibly get. We don't need to be attacked, even more. Those who have been sexually assaulted or raped should not be shamed for what happened to them because of the effects that are already left on them, the fact that they didn't consent, and lastly, because this is just bullying. Being raped or sexually assaulted is already one of the worst things I can imagine, and it's one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. Adding the shaming for something that I wasn't able to stop and that I did not cause is so much worse. Rape and sexual assault needs to stop, but so does the shaming that we get.